Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I'd like to show you how I made this sweet little card. And I'm using some of the beautiful Delightful Daisy Designer Series paper. And here is some of the paper. This is the sheet I'm using for this particular project. There's this beautiful yellow daisy paper, and you can see the back sides are just as pretty as the fronts. This is kind of a dapper denim color wash. This one is also like a watercolor wash background with this pretty stripe. There's the back sides on these are just as pretty as the fronts. And here's a couple more of this one has got a tranquil tide background on it. This also has kind of a color wash look to it that is white daisies with yellow centers. Very, very pretty. And then this kind of leaf pattern on the back. I think that's Old Olive. And it really goes well with it. Then there is two more papers. This one, which is similar to this that I'm using today, only it's a little busier and it's got a little bit more of the yellows and the peaches in it. Now that back side has this beautiful peach color pattern on it. And then the last one is this absolutely gorgeous kind of peachy pink daisy pattern on it, and then this pretty tranquil tide leaf pattern on the back. It's absolutely, I have to tell you that this year the papers in the catalog are some of my favorites that we've had in a long time. They're just beautiful. Now let me set these aside and tell you what it is you need to make this card. To make this card, I used a 8.5 by 5.5 piece of Whisper White folded and scored at 4 1/4. Then you need a piece of Wisteria Wonder that is 5 1/4 by 4. Then you need a piece of Whisper White that is 3.75 by 5. And then you need some of the Designer Series paper. In this case, I'm going to cut this and I'm going to show you how I'm cutting it. And then you need some scrap of the Wisteria Wonder. And you'll need a scrap piece of white, but we're going to cut it and you'll see how we get all of that out of here. So let's just get started here, and I'm going to bring up my trimmer and I'm going to show you. I figured out that by doing it this way and cutting it across this way, I can get 12 of these cards out of a single sheet, 12 by 12 of this Designer Series paper, and I think that's pretty good value for the money. So what I'm going to do is set this paper at 3 3¾ here. Let's get this. Yes, no, pardon me. Yep, nope, 3 3/4. 3 3/4 here, and I'm just going to cut one entire sheet at 3 3/4. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, this piece of Whisper White is also 3 3/4 by 5. So I'm going to take these two pieces of paper and put them together here. And I'm going to put this point end at the 1 3/8 mark. And I'm going to put this other point down here at the 2.5 inch line. So 1 3/8 at the top here and 2.5 at the bottom. And I'm just going to cut that piece off. And this now is the piece of scrap white that we need. and this will be the top of the card. Now, on this piece that I have left, what I'm going to do is put this shorter point here in the cutting channel, and I'm going to square that off, and we're going to save this little piece because we're going to use that for the decoration. Now this is all ready to cut for another card, and that's why I say you can get 4 in a strip at 3.75, and that means that you can get 4, 8, 12 across a sheet of paper. So it's quite a good use, I think, of the paper. So now we've got these 2 pieces here, which will go on our Wisteria Wonder base here to make the front of this card. Now, I also used this embossing folder. I'm going to turn this over so you can see it. It's called Sparkle in the catalog, and I'm just going to run this piece of white through the embossing folder. And the only thing you have to watch is you have to be careful, because if you put this paper in wrong, you'll end up with a debossed side up rather than an embossed side. And I tried it both ways, and I definitely like the embossed side. So what you have to do is put it in so the Sizzix and Stampin' Up sign are at the front, and put your paper in so this point is up here, and then run this through the Big Shot to emboss this little piece of paper. And in preparation for this, I've already run mine through. Okay, so there's my piece already embossed. So let me move that folder out of the way. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take this piece of designer series paper, and I'm just going to use some snail and get that put on my piece of Wisteria Wonder here. And so I'm going to put it on so that it has a similar margin. So this piece, because we cut them together, matches the line perfectly. So I'm going to put some snail on this piece, and I'm going to add that piece to this card and get it set so that the edges match down, and there we have it set on the card. All right, now what I did to get this detail across here, I used this white Stampin' Up ribbon. I think it's called white taffeta ribbon, and I cut a piece that was long enough here to wrap around my card, and I laid this piece of ribbon down here and then put my snail on the back where I could secure the ribbon, and then put that in place on one side. And then I did put a little bit of snail on this ribbon so that it would stay down and in place. Drew it across the card and then put it back here so that it was secured in place. Then I took a piece of Wisteria Wonder, and I guess I need my trimmer because I did cut a little piece that was 1/4 of an inch long here, and we'll use this piece of scrap again in a minute, but I wanted to lay this right across the ribbon because the ribbon looks to be about 1/2 inch, and so I put some snail on this little 1/4 inch piece and just laid it across and centered it on the ribbon here. Sounds easier than it is, I guess. There and there, and then push that down. Then I turned it over and used my snips to cut that piece of Wisteria Wonder off. So now I have a perfectly cut piece across there. Now then, before I add any of the other detail, I think I'll go ahead and add this to my card base here. And let's see. Let me just fold this card base and use my bone folder here to burnish that fold line. There we go. Now I am going to put some snail on this card. And put this in place and center it on this card base. Okay, now let me show you what I did with this little wedge that we cut out of here. Let me take my my piece of scrap again, and what I did was I kind of laid it across here, and I put some snail reluctant snail this morning, and I laid it in place along this edge with a bit of a margin kind of across, and then I took my trimmer again and I laid it in place so that I would have approximately the same margin that I have along here, and cut that piece. Now it may need a tiny bit of trimming, but on the inside of the card, I thought it made pretty detail to put right down here, and you can see that my point is just a bit too long. So I am going to just trim that point down, and well, let's see, I think I'm going to do that with the trimmer so I get a straight line. I'm not very good at cutting and getting straight lines. So I'm just going to take 32nd or so of an inch off of that edge on the bottom. And see what happened? Because it's a point, it got pushed up. The way to avoid that is to put your cutting blade part way up, then cut down, then cut up, and it takes off that little piece there on the bottom. And it still looks like it's a bit long. So I'm just going to trim that off like that. Let's see if that's enough. And this, I thought, made a pretty detail I think that's going to be just perfect here on the bottom of the card to represent the same kind of angle that we have up there. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of snail on this piece here, and go ahead and add that to the inside of the card, and get a little bit of a border around that piece, and there you see we have a nice little detail that's a little different for the inside of the card, and that will be our decoration for the inside of the card. So now the things we have left to do, see, the other thing that I'm using that I haven't talked about is I am using this Label Me Pretty stamp set, and I'm using this stamp here and You're the Best, and that's the sentiment that I'm going to be using on here. And I've already got my stamps ready to go, and here's my stamp set that has the flowers on either side to bracket whatever sentiment you put in it. And I'm going to show you on the inside what I did. Originally this piece had a connecting piece of red rubber right in the center here, but what I found was that when I stamped with it, if I got aggressive at all at pushing down on the stamp pad, that I picked up a lot of ink and I was having trouble getting a clean image on the paper. So what I did was I took a pencil and I just drew around the edges here of the stamp, and I peeled that back off the block, and I just cut this center section out and then put it back exactly where it was before, and now I have get a clean image every time. And if you're careful, you may not get that, but I sure couldn't consistently get a good image. So that worked for me. These stamps are pretty versatile. There's all kinds of things you can do to make them work, and that seems to work for me. And then I've got You're the Best here. Now, the ink that I used, I'm going to need a little bit of scratch paper here. I tried using the Wisteria Wonder to put my image down, and it was so pale that it looked a little anemic. So I decided to use Perfect Plum, and let's see, I think we can get this image punched out of here. I'm using the punch that goes with that set. And yes, we absolutely can get the punch out of here. So there's no need for additional scrap paper because we can just use this. And so what I did was I used Perfect Plum, and Perfect Plum by itself is pretty dark. So what I did was I stamped off once, and then I put this image down on the paper, and I think it came out pretty good. So there we have that, and let me make sure that's going to cut. Yep, that will be perfect. Okay, so then the same thing with this sentiment, You're the Best. What I did was I stamped off once, and then I stamped it in place on the card. And now I can use my punch to cut out that sentiment with the label here. And there's my sentiment that matches the color pretty well. And then on my other piece of scrap Wisteria Wonder, I cut out my label again to get the backing. And so I think that's it for the ink and for the punch and the stamps. So we move those out of the way. And so now we have our sentiment stamped and cut out. And all we need to add to this card is the sentiment and a little bow here for the top. So do the bow. And what I like to do with my bows is leave them on the spool. That way I get the least amount of waste. And this is a pretty small bow that I need here. I don't want something real big. And so let me... Okay. And on this one, I folded my tails over and cut back towards the bow, and I got that little detail on the end of the ribbon tail, and I kind of like that. So I'm going to do the same on this side and then cut back towards the bow. So I think that's fine. And what I'm going to do is glue that on with a glue dot. And I'm actually going to put a couple of glue dots on this bow so that I can be sure that it will stay where I want it. And I'm going to put it right along that edge there. And so there's my bow. And then on this piece, what I find is that if you cut this backing piece in half, and you can, with a slim margin, I'm going to bring it up so you can see it here, get that edge that's cut to go right behind the little edge on the top of the sentiment, so you don't see that cut edge. And that's my plan, to do that on the top and the bottom. So the way you do that is to add some snail along the, is this thing out? It must be. Add some snail along the top edge and the bottom edge, and then work your piece here. If you have just a small margin, that cut edge disappears. So again, a very small margin, and you'll have to work it around until that edge disappears behind both sides. So there, we've got that one, and then do exactly the same thing on this side. So again, the slimmest margin will allow you to have both of those cut lines just sort of disappear behind this. And there you can see, you don't see either one of the cut lines, and it's rimmed almost completely except for this just little edge on the end here. And if you do have a little, I see I didn't lay it down exactly perfectly, so I do have a little cut edge here, and I'm just going to trim that away. And I don't think anybody's any the wiser, and I think you get a nice image. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is take this piece and put it on dimensionals. kind of like that. Just offset a little bit to this side. There, I think that's pretty good. And there is our project for the day. I will show you another version, the first prototype that I made, that I didn't like as well. I did make one other one where I didn't have this bottom part embossed, and I just think that makes such a big difference on this card. And I just love the way it came out. This seemed just kind of stark to me, and I really liked it a lot better this way with the embossing behind it. And I think it makes an absolutely lovely card. And here we have our decoration on the inside, kind of mimicking what we did on the outside. And that is the project for today. So I hope you like it, and I hope you'll give it a try. You can purchase everything that you see here on my website, which is www.lbettinger.stampinup.net. And if you don't already have a demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, and or you could join my team. And always down below, all of the dimensions and the sizes, because sometimes my mouth gets going faster than my brain and I misspeak a size of something, but the details are always down below, as well as my number. If you're interested in joining my team, give me a call and we can talk through the details. In any case, until next time, bye.